Hi, this is David Marshall. Now, in the cloud version, uh, the audio version of today's class, I think I left it off for about 15 minutes. So I thought I'd make a short video going over some of those things that you may have missed in that. And I'll just try to go through the slides as best as I can and try to describe what is going to go on in today's lecture. So as I recall, I might have missed 15 minutes, but I'll try my best to do that. So let's see if we can get into this a bit more and see if we can get into it. So what I want you to do today is see where this study of consumer activism intersects with your assignment. And so we're talking about commodity activism, and there's lots of things that might come into play in that: consumer activism, commodity activism, all those sorts of things are coming into play. So keep in mind those pitch words that you had before that you got for your campaign strategy element. So you've got all those dimensions there. But now I want you to start thinking about today's keywords: commodity activism, brand prosumption, authenticity, culture jamming, pinkwashing, greenwashing, privilege, empowerment, consumer, CSR, and think of them all and try as best you can to put them together into where they fit into your campaign. And you'll find that as you work through those things, that will help, in a sense, for you to make sense of today's lecture, class, but also to make sense of what is valuable related to your assignment. And that value related to your assignment is actually what you're going to try to do with every week that is connected to the unit, because that's where the summary analysis comes in. So some of this will not necessarily be right in your pitch. You're being aggressive, positive in your pitch, in your PowerPoint, but in the campaign summary analysis, you've got to integrate it back into the unit. You've got to integrate it back into the ideas generated from the unit in different areas. So this is one of them, and you may find that some of these things are really useful to pull an authenticity related to the particular product or service that you're going for, and its individuality, and maybe even its collective identity as well. Sometimes ethical relations produce a closer connection, emotional connection to the product. So very quickly, commodity activism, what is it? It's a politically engaged relationship to consumer subjectivity and citizenship, normative, affective suasion carried out through ethical consumption. And it's linked with corporate social responsibility. So how should we think of that sort of thing? Normative and affective and suasion are not words that you come across all the time. And the idea of consumer subjectivity is a notion of how we're shaped in our current world, how we're, in a way, made into subjects. And what it is trying to get a sense of how do products and how do we get affective relationships to products. Sometimes these are done by corporations that attach us to some ethic, some relationship to it. And so, in a sense, as I say, how should we think of it? It's a shifted politics that we're dealing with now that has a lot to do with consuming as well. So the act of consumption can define political activity right now. We make choices about what we buy. And yes, they are highly individualized, but they sometimes have a reason behind it. And what's happened is corporations realize that we have these attachments to products, and they're playing with this all the time when they're making things. And they attach ethical reasons why we might be attached to any particular product. And so it goes that way, that we're always sort of thinking of those things. So it's maybe a decline in traditional politics, and maybe it's also identifying a larger sense of corporate power. And it's also a sense that we are empowered as consumers, or feel that we're empowered as consumers, as we engage with products as an expression of what we want to be better in our world. And so there's a lot that goes on with corporations trying to make their brand have a kind of ethic that's almost like an individual and what they are seen as. And there's a lot in how we can see ourselves trying to transform our world by what we buy. Interesting? Yes. Is it consistent? Probably not, but it's certainly there, and we're active in a sense right across the planet about how we relate to consumption and how corporations relate to how we consume in an ethical way. So there is a history behind it, and that history is a kind of commodity activism that often we don't think about it. The Boston Tea Party was about a commodity and about throwing tea into the Boston harbor because the Brits were trying to tax tea and other products as they came into America. And America thought that this was unfair, or at least Americans did, and it led to the War of Independence. There's lots of other ones that are really interesting, and I think this one is the one that I talk about in this week, is that there's a lot of anti-slavery products that are made, cups, bowls, this one, sugar bowl, that basically says the East India sugar is not made by slaves. That's really interesting. And that is not something that's modern. This product was made in the 1820s. So the relationship between products and ethical consumption has been going on a long time. And there's lots of other examples of how we have developed a kind of ethic around it. A Fair Trade Association born in about 1989. There are lots of precursors of that, of boycotts of different types of products, depending on the politics that emerges some sort of place. And sometimes governments also getting involved in not allowing a certain product to come into a country. So South Africa was in an anti-apartheid way. A lot of its products didn't move around because of that, and there are lots of very consumer-oriented campaigns related to that. And you can go on and on with different campaigns that are floating around now that are about fair trade or involvement or connection to something that we treasure or feel that is important. Ecologically friendly products, organic products, something that leads to a better green earth world is something that we see a lot in contemporary supermarkets as we walk around and work out which products we're going to buy. We look for fair trade logos to say did they use good labor as they made these things, and are they organic, or are they produced by all sorts of pesticides and other things that make the product big and edible, but also might make them a little bit dangerous as well. And we play in that world of what is important to us. And so I'm guessing that we got very close to this in the lecture itself. So this is where I'm going to stop and not go much further. But what we have is a mix of politics and consumers and corporations. So some of it is definite political activity by individuals called culture jamming. And it's a long tradition, and they built up a magazine and other things, Adbusters, and they try to break down corporate power and control of the individual by making, in a sense, ads that aren't ads, that are making a counter case of what, in this case, how a perfume is not what we think it is. And you can try to interpret this ad to work out that it's about probably bulimia and not about Calvin Klein's notion of obsession. But obsession then becomes a conveyance of how beauty products are not what they appear. They are designed in some ways to harm people as much as they appear to be helping. So we can go on and on with these things. There are consumer watchdog groups, and what they try to do is say what's wrong with products and provide background about it if they've done something wrong. And I talked about that a little bit there. A particular product was the Pinto from a long, long time ago. But basically consumer reports and consumer rights about sort of disputing what corporations say are about their products, and they may or may not be true. And then Bono, who's from U2, developing an inspired campaign, a red campaign, that connected to multiple corporations to give some sort of assistance and funding to help underprivileged areas of the planet in certain things like having AIDS remedies and drugs, which were quite common in the rest of the world, but weren't really out there in Africa, for instance, and providing the money for it. And so companies would develop a kind of corporate social responsibility, partly through Bono pushing them that way. And that would connect to all of us in a sense of what is a valuable sort of thing. And you'd see these campaigns, the redness of it, and you know that you were contributing to something that gave a fund back to Africa related to maybe some medical sort of underdevelopment within that country. So I won't go on further than that. We have a case one here. We've got all sorts of things. I'd love to be able to show other things that are attached to it. And certainly they're there. I know that this video didn't run earlier, so let's see if it runs this time. No, it didn't run this time either. So we've got lots of things there that we can get into. Look on the recorded sort of class, and you'll probably find these things a little bit better than I'm doing right now. And this was just to catch up and give you another version because it wasn't all there, and I just got a little concerned that it wasn't all there. So enjoy. Hopefully 11 minutes isn't too bad to watch a video, but there it is.